Okay, we're live. TinaO here from TinaO Life on my personal page, and this is Mystery Monday. Welcome, welcome. It's been a while, hey? I mean, I've been here, but I haven't been on this conversation. I guess you might say I was in my own mystery. Let's say that. So tonight, for those of you who haven't been on a Mystery Monday with me today, you know that, or you don't know, you'll find out that this is about a 15, sometimes 20-minute conversation about the word I have devoted my very life's work to. To me, mystery is story. Story is the narrative on mystery. Mystery is another version for me of my experience of God. It is the divine place from which I hear and chase and listen and invite you all to come in with me. Tonight, I want to talk a little bit about the mystery of being heard. Boy, oh boy, there's so much. There's so much to it. I think of being heard. Well, you know what? Honestly, I think how I kind of fell into my body of work was I started to get feedback from people, and they would say things like, I've never been heard like that before. No one's ever heard me that way before. And that's when I knew that I was onto something, that I was doing what I call my innate who. So in core story work, it's, who, what, when, where, why, and how. I'm a writer. What can I say? I'm a bit of a dork that way. It's actually really trackable. And so my innate who is that thing that behooves me to not do, or the thing that behooves you to not do. And we might feel like it's magic sometimes when we're in that place with someone, when they're doing that thing that they do that they can't really describe what it is, and it just sort of happens. And for me, I create these spaces where listening happens, where people feel heard. And in the place where they feel heard, I am hearing, and I also feel heard. It's in that space between us where we're both, I call it like getting in the room. It's like sometimes like, man, you let me in the room. You let me in your room. The space between us, and we feel heard. Today, I felt really heard. I shared a story with someone, and it was a story I hadn't put words to in probably a year. And it was hard to say. It was like I didn't have the words, which really, when you don't have the words, it means that that relationship between you and your own story isn't there yet. There's a gap between your own hearing. And sometimes the way that I am heard is actually right on the words. As I'm speaking the words, I feel heard. So I shared this story, and the response that came back was an experience of being heard for me. And here's how I know, or at least here's how I define this mystery of being heard. It's when the person who responds back to you doesn't respond back with what we call active listening and basically repeating back what they heard, which is a good start. Like, I don't want to dismiss all that work, that imago work, which is great work. It's great work. Active listening, which I know that's just the tip of the iceberg in imago work. Active listening is this, I'm hearing what they're saying. I'm able to hear what they're saying and not what I'm hearing in my head. I'm actually hearing them. That's not what happened today. That's a good start. What happened today was the person who offered something back to me didn't reflect back to me what I said. He shared with me how it hit him, how he received it, and not just his own feelings about how he received it, but how he felt I might feel, without taking on an assumption of how I might feel, but instead considered how I might feel and basically just said, not on these words, thank you for sharing that with me. And I could feel that what I said was received by him. And that is the mystery of being heard. What I said was received by him, fully received. And the only way that you can share with someone that you've received it is actually to receive it. He could have said, I heard you say this, I heard you say that. Those are nice things to do, by the way. That's a great place to start. So like you might sound something like, so I'm hearing you say da 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 da. So what happens? You just notice what happens to me after I just did that? I'm hearing you say da 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 da. And in that gap that happens after, there's an emotional connection, right? I'm hearing you say this. And you're probably hearing in your head, which makes me feel like this, which then makes me want to do this, which then makes me really want to make sure that you know you're not alone in that. Being heard is about receiving. Something I want you to consider in the work that I am coming out into the world with is this idea that honestly, I feel really awkward about. I'm calling it storytelling for reconciliation. I don't even feel like I can say the word reconciliation. It's not my word to say, and yet it is my word to say. Because I want to offer something in a place of reconciliation. And I have a lot of Indigenous people in my life. I'm a story coach and a story listener with Powerhouse Impact Media Group, which is a 100% Indigenous owned organization. And in the last fire circle that we did, Echo got up and told us this beautiful piece. And she also said, before we can have reconciliation, we must have truth. And again, I go back to this idea of truth is not simply, or rather, listening to truth is not simply hearing the words of truth. Being heard, hearing truth, is that pause that happens after you hear the words, where the words that are said to you have impact. And then beyond your impact of how those words hit you, underneath those words and the impact on you, there's a sense, if you let it in, if you let yourself receive it, there's a sense of how you might feel for the person across from you. And then underneath that is the place where the two of you stand in the truth. And then beyond that, because there is a beyond that, there's a place of acceptance of what was said, was felt by both of you. It can now not be said. It is accepted as true. And in the place of accepted as true, we hit the wall of futility against the very thing we just didn't want to know because it's just too hard. And when we hit the wall of futility, and this is attachment stuff, those of you who are the attachment parenting, you'll know the traffic circle thing, right? Once we hit the wall of futility, we stand in the truth where there's nothing but the thing between us. And we hear it and we hear it, and we can now not hear it. After the wall of futility becomes acceptance. And then in acceptance, we let the whole thing in. And in acceptance, we grieve. We actually grieve. Now, that's when there's pain on the table. There isn't always pain on the table, right? Might not be grief, it might be joy. It might be in the acceptance, in that place of being heard. Now that you've held the space between the two of you and you heard whatever it is, I'm having a baby, I'm getting married, I hit a milestone, whatever it is, in the land of acceptance, you let it in. You have joy. There's a release of something, a release of joy. For me today, there was a release of tears. I didn't even know that I needed that piece that I shared to be received. Of course, I needed it to be received, but I didn't know it. I wasn't even ready to know it. So as it was received, I felt it. He felt it. I cried. And after the tears, in the traffic circle of attachment of being heard, there is rest. And in rest, there can be reconciliation. But you can't get to reconciliation unless you're willing to do all those other pieces first. Reconciliation, just like being heard, isn't an intellectual exercise. It might start like that because some of us are so out of practice that simply doing the intellectual exercise gets us started. The intellectual exercise of this isn't about me, it's about you. I'm listening to you. What did you say? Am I busy in my thoughts thinking about how I feel or what I think? Or am I thinking about you? But then after the intellectual exercise, there's an emotional response. There's a pause. And then it's not just your emotional response, it's their emotional response. And then past their emotional response, there's your collective emotional response where you're in the room together. And then wall of futility. This is now true. I feel it as true. I cannot get away from it. I slide down the wall of futility. I land in a place of acceptance. I cry or I exclaim, there's a release of some kind, and then I rest. The pain rests, the joy rests, the next step emerges just naturally. It's like, you know, that Byron Katie piece that says, you don't make decisions, decisions make you. You can't make decisions in an intellectual place. You can't make decisions about the next step beyond the truth until you hit the reconciliation. There is no next step until someone's been heard. If you make a step before there is hearing, this sounds really harsh, okay? But just breathe. If this sounds harsh, if you step before there is hearing, if there is pain, you're stepping on a burial ground. You're building atop something dead that has not been honored yet. So this mystery of being heard, one, there's an equation of how to do it. You can look it up. It's Gordon Neufeld's attachment parenting or the traffic circle, that basically wall of futility, acceptance, right? Wall of futility, tears, rest. That's the how-to. And then there's just the practice of our humanity. Can I feel you feeling me? Are you in the room with me or am I alone in this? The other thing about being heard, and I'll close on this because I could go on forever. I really this is my work in the world. Storytelling for reconciliation is about this. But I want you to know that being heard isn't always on words. And we're very out of practice in this. You can hear someone by simply holding their eyes. If you hold someone's eyes, what they may not be able to put on sound, what they may not be able to even get through in their own intellectual understanding because they might not have that yet. You know, we can only speak to the filters that we have, right? So if you don't have a lot of filters in here, you might not have a lot of communication. That's okay. You also might not be someone like me who uses a lot of words. You might be someone who communicates physically as your primary way of communicating. I don't know. Back up the train. So to get to this place of when we're communicating beyond words, if there are no words, just look at their eyes. Start there. Of course, there's body language too, but seriously, if you're willing to hold someone's gaze, you will hear them. You might hear yourself first because you'll panic, because we don't spend a lot of time actually being with people. But you can learn. We can learn. We can all learn. So as I step out into this world of storytelling for reconciliation, my job as a storyteller is to make sure that I take every story through all of those places to a place of rest. So every audience that sits with me, we never stay in the pain place, or we never stay in the joy place. We move all the way through to the traffic circle, the wall of futility, acceptance, grief, whatever, or exclamation, rest. My job is to take you there. You might get stuck along the way because you might actually get triggered by something and not be able to get all the way. And that's okay. But my job is to do my best to make sure I don't leave anyone behind. I'm going to tell you a complete story, beginning, middle, and end, and not as an intellectual exercise, but as an emotional responsibility, as a human responsibility. My show, Oh My God, is a story like that. It's a story of atrocities. It's a story of grief. It's a story of silliness. And it walks us through the traffic circle to a place of rest. Also, as a storyteller, my job is to not feed you the answer. My job is to make sure I touch all the pieces and you leave with the answer that you're ready to hold in a place of rest. So I'm TinaO from TinaO Life. This is Mystery Monday. We're talking about being heard. We're talking about storytelling for reconciliation. And I will see you again, probably on Wednesday for Words Wednesday, bringing back a little bit of Burn Her as well. And I'll be back on Mondays for Mystery Monday. I have just launched a free screening premiere for May 28th of Oh My God. I will post it here. I want you to be there. I want you to be uncomfortable and comfortable and surprised and in a mystery with me. So I'll see you in Oh My God. And if I don't see you there, I'll see you Monday. I'm TinaO from TinaO Life. Thanks for being here. And thank you for listening. Mwah. Bye, everybody.